Hey, this is Tyler from Young Guns. Today I'm going to be giving you an overview on the English wheel. The English wheel was invented roughly about 200 to 300 years ago in Germany. The English wheel was brought to the United States, invented to the United States in roughly around 1980. For the most part, most English wheels are the exact same. They have a tubular frame, usually in the C-channel shape. They all consist of an upper wheel and a lower wheel. The typical English wheel will either come with 4 to 6 dies. This particular wheel is a Laze wheeling machine from Laze Metal Dreams. This unit actually comes with 6 lower dies. I have the flattest die right here, the second die in the machine. And then I have 2 a little bit deeper radius, and then I have these 2 offset wheels. Along with the 2 offset wheels, Laze decided to go ahead. He gave you this little shim right here. What the shim does is whenever you're using the flat wheel, you can stick it underneath one of the front bearings. And what it does is it takes this wheel here and tips it up just slightly on edge, and you actually have a flat spot. 100% flat, and it's off to the very front of the wheel, so if you need to smooth something out, you can take care of that. The other piece he has up here on the very top, which looks a little funny, is this rubber band. I'll get into telling you what this rubber band does a little bit later, but I just want to let you know what that was up on top of the machine. Whenever you use the English wheel, you're going to start with the number 1 die, which is the flattest wheel. The reason you're going to start with the flattest wheel is because it has the biggest contact patch. Contact patch on this die is roughly about 1/2 inch. I actually have a panel here that I rolled up a little bit earlier, but so here you have each one of the track marks from the dies. You start out with the flattest die here, and you have the about 1/2 inch, 5/16, about 3/16, and it keeps going down all the way until you get to this last one here where it's just a bare line. What's important about this is that whenever you start wheeling on the machine, you use a technique called tracking. What tracking is that you're sticking the metal in the machine and you're pushing it forward, and you turn it just a little bit, and then wheel back towards yourself, turn a little bit, wheel back towards the mean, turn a little bit, roll back towards yourself. What you're doing is you're actually pressing the upper die and the lower die together, which is a lot like a hammer and an anvil and hitting a piece of metal. What it does is it's putting a stretch. If you can picture an anvil and a hammer, whenever you hit it with a hammer, it hits in one spot, but it stretches 360 degrees. The English wheel works the exact same way, except for instead of one hammer blow, it's a constant rolling method. So everywhere the wheel touches, it's stretching the metal 360 degrees. So I'm going to flip this guy over, and I want to give you a couple examples, one good, one bad, of tracking, and I'll bring it back up and show you an example real quick. So I'm going to load the metal in the machine. Before I use the machine, I actually like to take my tack cloth and wipe down both sides of the piece of metal and the wheels, both upper and lower die. The reason I do this is to get all dust and contaminants off the wheels. Any little rock or imperfection you have in your wheels is going to get translated back into your piece. So if you have a little rock or a little chip in your wheel, every time it comes around, it's going to put a little nick in your panel. Whenever you're using the English wheel, what you're looking for when you're done with your product is you're going to look for a nice polished looking piece of metal. And what it's doing is it's taking the polished surface of the wheel and it's reflecting it back onto this panel. So if these are messed up, your final product of the metal is going to be messed up as well. But as you can see right here, I can put the metal through there. I'm going to go ahead and tighten her up just a little bit. The way that I like to test to see how tight the wheels are pushing together is I used to use the palm of my hand and just tap it across there, add in just a little bit of pressure until it has a nice grab. You can push it over just a little bit and it puts just a little bit of tingle in the bottom of your hand. And you don't have to crush it over there, but just give it a nice little tap. What that's doing is it's letting you know that your metal has enough pressure and it is getting it stretched. You can crank it down a whole lot more, but what it's going to do is it's going to put a whole lot of pressure into one spot. And if you don't get your overlaps, it's absolutely going to put a low spot and a high spot and a low spot. And if you went back over it again, you're going to be able to fill it. You're going to get an uneven stretch, and your panel is going to get disshaped a little bit. But let me get this back over here, and I'll show you the tracking motion, and I'll show you the patterns of what a good tracking pattern and a bad tracking pattern would look like. So you can see that I have both my hands right here in front of me. I'm keeping my shoulders pretty much parallel to the machine. And I can push the metal through, churn, back, churn, forward, churn, back, churn. We just keep going back and forth with this motion. So right here I did an example of bad tracking. I'm going to go ahead and flip it around, and I'm going to give an example of good, and then I'll come over and show you what the difference is between the two. You can see that I've put in probably about, easily an additional 3 or 4 times as many tracks back and forth. It's because I'm trying to make sure that each one is overlapping the piece in front of it, so that I'm getting a nice even stretch across the panel. It's a lot easier to control your panel if you're constantly keeping your overlap. So here we go. Right here we'd have an example. Right here we have an example. This is real decent tracking right here. You can see how all the lines are pretty much going over the top of each other. I got a couple spots here that aren't great, but this would be your overused bad tracking. You can see, I mean, you have like a good inch in here. But you have stretch, non-stretch, stretch, non-stretch. So as you're working the metal, if you keep having those big non-overlapping passes, your panel is not getting stretched symmetrically, and you're going to have problems working the panel later in time. I told you I was going to tell you about the rubber band on this English wheel. What this rubber band does, what the rubber band does here is whenever you're stretching the metal, this allows for the middle of the top of the die to still make full contact, but then on either side of the wheel, being the front and the back, still has the rubber from the wheel. So what it's doing is it's still stretching in the middle, but then it's, with a little bit of pressure on the outsides, it's not allowing the panel to bend in 360 directions. So now it's only bending one direction, and that's going to be over the bottom wheel in this direction. So I can take this piece and run it back through here. Sounds completely different, it's almost quiet. But when I use this wheel and run it through here, it only bends the metal one direction, where I'm going to show you in a couple other videos of exactly where you put your pressure on the panel, how it affects the panel, and how the metal is going to move. So now I showed you a few different things about the English wheel. I guess the best thing to do is to go out and practice up and figure out which type of English wheel works best for you.